I'm going to be showing you how to create a mobile application using Iron Speed Designer. I'll be using version 9.1.1, the new maintenance version that came out, but all you need is 9.0 or higher to do this. So before I go on, I just want to put a plug in there for a few of the other webinars we have. I'll be focusing just on the mobile aspects of Iron Speed Designer, but we have 2 introductory webinars you may want to check out if you haven't already. Those are very frequent. And then there's also advanced topics like SharePoint and code customization that are given on a more periodic basis. So you may want to really look for those if those are interests of yours. So today what I'll be covering, I'll talk briefly about the mobile platforms that are out there that Iron Speed is targeting. I'll talk about the features we offer in the product. I'll give a multi-part demo where I create an application. I'll give a detailed product tour pointing out the mobile aspects of the product, and it'll take a while to get through all that. I'm really going to try and point out every little piece of the mobile part. And then I'll do some layout customization. And then I'll talk a little bit about mixing and matching mobile and full-size web pages in a single application. And then I'll also talk about some of the browser limitations that you will run into on some of the mobile platforms out there. And then lastly, I'll handle any questions at the end. So please submit your questions along the way. I will run over, if necessary, to answer questions that are on topic, that are on mobile. If you want to talk about IBM 370 mainframes, well, you know, there might be a dinosaur convention in town that you can do that. But here today, we're talking about mobile. So let me get right into the first topic here, mobile platforms. As you're probably aware, in the mobile phone space and the tablets as well, Google and Apple are really dominating that market, in today's market. And, you know, the winners have changed over the years, but that's how it is today. Apple has really kind of set the standard, and Google, though, is growing at 3 times the rate. But Apple and Google very strong. Microsoft is still trying to get itself established. In terms of the Google products, the hardware and the operating systems are more diverse. However, for browser applications, the diversity really isn't a big factor, since the web browser really kind of homogenizes everything. Now, Iron Speed Designer 9.0 and higher supports small screen smartphones. That's what we set out to achieve. It's really not designed for tablets, which have larger screens and tend to work fine with normal-sized web pages. So if you're using a tablet, you have 2 options. You can use the full-size web pages that we produce, which is what most websites tend to do for tablets. And the new modern layout in 9.1 is actually ideally suited for that because it doesn't require horizontal scrolling in general. The other option is to use the mobile pages, which are designed for the phones, so you would really need to add extra panels in that case to use up the space from the larger screen. So the features we have in the product, really primarily what we do is we create ASPX pages that are optimized for the small screen smartphone browser. We're not creating native apps. We don't do that for the desktop, and we don't do that for the phones either. You can create mobile and full-size web pages using Iron Speed Designer in the same application. The functionality we have for the mobile pages is essentially equivalent to what we have for the full-size web pages. The same modern and classic page styles are supported in both. There's CRUD page types for mobile. Note there's just the basic ones. The workflow and some of the advanced layouts for the full-size desktop pages you would not find on the phone. They just would not fit. So there are some differences there. You have full security, sign in, sign out for the God user, and absolutely the same databases are supported for mobile, since that's independent of the user interface. Mobile also supports SharePoint, but notice that if you do have SharePoint menus in your master pages, those will not appear on the smaller mobile pages, so there's no space for that. The code that you write and you generate for mobile is extremely similar to the full-size pages. So C# and VB are supported as you would expect. It's the same base class as DLL used by the 2, the same code customization model, and you even share the same data access code if you're in the same application. So that's really an overview. Now I'm going to go and start a demonstration using version 9.1.1, the maintenance version that came out the past week. If you're on 9.1.0, I'd recommend upgrading to that. So we'll do some creation of some CRUD pages We're going to do both mobile and full-size web pages while we're at it, and then I'll create some security pages. So here we are with version 9.1.1. Notice the version number in the title. That's actually a customer-suggested enhancement that we put in there. So, please send your suggestions and your, and bug requests, things like that, to your salespeople, or bring them up today during our call, our webinar. So I'm going to create a application using the Southwind sample database, nice and simple, with a few tables. You'll notice that I have data entry forms, reports, workflow, and mobile. The mobile are the mobile pages, the scaled-down pages. All the others are the full-size web. So I'm going to go and create all the mobile pages, and just for good measure, in case we want to look at them, for a question or so, I'm going to create the workflow and the reports. Now, note that the workflow and the mobile pages were not being created by default. If you wanted to create those, you could using the application generation options. And for the mobile pages, those would be right in here, pages to create. So lots of application generation options. We can take a little look at that later on. But this is something you may want to do if you want to always create mobile pages in your application. So those are the page types I want to create, and I'm just going to select, I think, 3 tables would be good enough for demonstration. And primary keys is the same for mobile, but we don't need to worry about that here. I am going to do a multilingual application using Dutch, although I don't know a single word of Dutch, but we'll use that to demonstrate the feature. And we'll just go with the defaults, create a website, C#.NET 3.5. And finish, and that will be building, and we'll be ready to go in a minute. So what you'll see is that I am creating actually an application that has mobile pages and full-size web pages. They'll be alongside each other. There'll be mobile pages right next to the corresponding full-size pages for a given table or area. And then I'm also going to create security pages in just a minute. You can see the tree now is starting to show in the Application Explorer. And I want to emphasize that I'm going to be just spending the whole time here in the Pages tab of the Application Explorer, because we're focusing on mobile, and that's all page related, specific to the user interface. The Databases tab, we could go in there if we wanted to, but there's nothing specific to mobile in there, because mobile is really all about the size of the pages. It is really database agnostic. So if you make changes in the Databases tab, you're going to be affecting your mobile and your full-size pages. So we've created the application. What I'm going to do now, while I'm thinking of this, is actually add security to this application. So if you're familiar with the product, you know that we have a wizard for that, the Application Security Wizard. And the user interface here is the same regardless if you're creating mobile or full-size pages. It did not change at all for that functionality in the product introduced at 9.0. We're just going to go through the wizard and select the table. Just fill this stuff in real quick. And I'm not going to put any security on. I guess I will do the roles here. And I'm going to just press Finish, build the application. So, and you'll see the pages that get created from this. So it's really transparent to you when you're in here. Whether or not you're doing mobile or not, it will depend upon if you've already created mobile pages, which we did. So we'll get the mobile versions of those. So in just a minute now, those pages will be created for security, and we'll start taking a look at this application that I've created. Now, for security, we have pages to sign in, to sign out, and to retrieve a forgot username or password. So we have 2 sets of pages in this case, one for mobile and one for the full size. Which I'll show you. Actually, let's get the security out of the way here first. That's real simple, because once we dig into the CRUD pages, we're going to see there's a lot to talk about there. So let's look at the sign-in page. We'll go to Live Preview. I'll stay in Live Preview for this webinar. It's just a lot easier rather than navigating between windows. The Live Preview is a Internet Explorer 9.0 equivalent browser that we'll be using for both full-size web and mobile. Here's the sign-in page in 9.1.1 with the modern look that we used. We could have chose one of the classic page styles, but I'm using the latest modern. And you'll notice, of course, that this page takes a lot of space up that you would not fit it on a phone, and that's why we have the mobile sign-in page. First thing you'll notice is that there's a simulated phone around the browser to give you an idea on what the size and the aspect ratio would be on a mobile device. It's an approximation. That's why it's generic. And remember that the browser component being used here is an IE component, which probably is different from what you're going to have on your mobile device. But this gives you a pretty good feel for what it's going to look like. And one feature to be aware of here is that if you click anywhere on the phone, it will change aspect ratio from portrait to landscape and back. So that's kind of handy for checking things out. So the sign-in page here, very straightforward, username, password, all the fields, and the button here to say, yes, okay, let me sign in. And I'll show you the menu in just a minute. And after you sign out from an application, there's a sign-out page. There's the full size. And here is the mobile one, very straightforward. And the forgot user, similar type of situation there. Then you'll notice that all these full-size pages have menus on them. And you'll see a common theme with the mobile ones that we do not have a menu on the page. It's not a dedicated page. And I'll show you that in a second. Okay, so here's the forgot user mobile. Very straightforward, port of that user interface. Okay, so now let's go toward the main menu for mobile. As I said a moment ago, it's in a separate page, so we'll press the menu button here, and that'll take us there. And you'll see that you have a logo here you can customize. You've got a button here that expands to show you the language. Remember, we had English and Dutch configured. That's where you would find that. And then there's a sign-in button that takes us to right where we were a moment ago, the sign-in. So this is the main menu, and there is a menu item for every table in the application. Now, you'll notice that that is different from the full-size web page. If I go to full-size web page, we've got a menu that's, again, on every page, and it has a sub-menu that pops up when you move the mouse over. Well, there really is no mouse over concept in the mobile area. It's just touches. So you don't have that non-committal, you move your finger over and have something happen. You actually have to press. So the concept just doesn't work or exist in mobile. So you press. And so when we press on one of these, we're going to go to the corresponding show table page for that. And let's do that. Let's just jump right in and look at the sales rep table for mobile. And this is the show table page. And I'm going to come right back to this, but I just want to show in contrast to appreciate the difference, the full-size web page. Here's the full-size web page, same table, and you've got a lot more stuff you can see. You've got full-size images. You've got a lot of data fields. You've got even a parent record being shown, and you've got a bunch of pop-up filters and sorts, buttons, and your sign-in and your menus. These are all accessible all at the same time. So, there are inherent compromises with a smartphone, a small screen. If we tried to put all this stuff on a single page, it would, it would basically just be a full-size page. That would not be very helpful. So let's go back. I'll just go back into the menu. So let's take a walkthrough of what we actually get here with the mobile application. We've got the table name, the title there. The menu button, you already know that. We've got a pop-down filters control. This actually was the inspiration for the new modern look in 9.1. So you'll see you can search on fields, you can filter and sort in here. So you've got the same functionality that you have with the full-size pages, just things are tucked away in different places. And then you also have a very simplified pagination control, and you could add buttons to this very easily in the layout. And then, of course, the big thing here is you've got your records listed, the repeater. And you should notice with all these mobile pages that we're scrolling vertically only. There should be no need, out of the box at least, to scroll horizontally. We went to great lengths to ensure that was the case, so that users are not getting lost in their mobile devices on the go, scrolling in 2 dimensions. Now, you can certainly shoot yourself in the foot and change your page layout to require horizontal scrolling, but you should not see that, again, out of the box. So what we're seeing here, in contrast to the full-size page, is we just got 3 fields. We just have an image and 2 text fields for the person's name. So we have a smart algorithm that goes through your database and tries to make a best guess of which fields to show here, because we can only show a handful in mobile. And you, of course, may disagree with the algorithm, and we'll go in there and remove some fields and add some fields. You can show more data if you want. It's just a question of how much can you show on a given row. So that's a basic show table page with some photos and some text. And that is pretty much it for the show table mobile. That's really where things revolve around. The next thing I'll show is the Add Record. Press the plus button, and that takes you to an Add Record, and you've got the fields you can type into, a drop-down list, and notice there's a date selector. We have that supported as well in mobile. Pressing the Save button would add a record. So let me go back, and I want to show you the Show Record. So the Show Table just gives you, by its nature, just a little bit amount of data here in the mobile, but you can see all the data if you press anywhere on the row and go to the Show Record page. Remember, in the very beginning there, I created 4 CRUD pages per mobile, so per table rather. So this is the third. And you'll see here that the data is different from the full size. Everything is arranged vertically, so we just always expand vertically. And of course, the labels blend into the background, and the values are, stand out. And one thing in here to point out is, if you scroll to the bottom, you'll see there's accordion control, that's called, and you can press on these, and these actually will show you a child table with its own pagination control and a similar look to the show table we saw a moment ago. So that's what the child tables are, and it's 3 different tables here. And something there to be aware of is that the child tables in the out-of-the-box mobile pages are only in the Show Record page. They are not in the Edit and the Add Record pages, because they become unwieldy pretty quickly, at least in the general case. Okay, so what I want to show next here is the other features we've got. You can delete a record, so you go to your Show Record page to delete it, and there's a confirmation on that, so you don't accidentally delete things. That's one of the things we came across with the mobile functionality, is that you really had to be very fault tolerant. Somebody could be walking across the street using their mobile device, and they could press the button accidentally. So you really need to be mindful of that. So we've got a prompt on a destructive operation. And then you'll notice the pencil is the Edit Record, which is essentially the same as the Add Record. And that's basically it for the CRUD pages for the mobile. And we've covered the security. And the last thing I want to cover in this part of this demonstration is just to really drive home the fact that we've got both mobile and the full-size pages alongside each other. Here's the Categories table. Here's the Show Categories table page. Now that, of course, that table has only 4 or 5 fields, so there's not too much there. But you'll still, again, notice that it's much simpler in mobile, the presentation. So that is that. As far as that part of the demo, we're ready to move on to the next piece. And this is a pretty big piece, taking a tour through Designer, going through all the components and everything for the application. But we won't be doing customization. I'll be pointing things out at this point. So we've already seen here, here's all the pages for your table. You probably know the concept if you've been using Iron Speed Designer. There's a folder for every table. And I created every page type under the sun here, with like 12, I don't know how many it was, full-size ones, as well as the 4 mobile ones. And you'll notice that the mobile pages have the little icon that it's supposed to be a phone. I think it looks like a ladybug, but make up your own mind. So all the mobile pages and components, which I mean by that is an ACX, control, those all have that icon, so you can easily distinguish between them. Okay, let's move on here. Again, we'll be in the Pages step this whole time. The next thing I want to point out is the App Themes folder. Important to know this area. This is where the style sheets are put in, which control the look of your application. And we chose the Cabernet Modern Page style. So that's why you see Cabernet. And there's 2 style sheets that get created in your application. Base styles. This contains the default styles that make your application look the way it does. And then there's Style CSS. Style CSS is the save file that you can make changes to. You can overwrite things in there. But base styles is really, what ships. So you may want to copy stuff from here and put into styles and make changes. So the style sheets would control the colors and many other cosmetic aspects of your application across the entire application. You'll notice that there are not separate style sheets for mobile versus the full-size web. They're actually all together here, which really makes it easier to maintain. Yet the mobile stuff is all put together in one spot. So if you search for mobile, you'll see the beginning of all the mobile styles at the end of the style sheet, which it looks like it constitutes about 25% of the total styles. So there is less to that because of the newer design and I think just the simplicity of mobile. So there's a style sheet. That's one way to customize the look. We'll look more at the layout customization in a little while. Headers and footers, another folder to be aware of, and you'll see that, again, there are 2 ladybugs and 3 non, and you'll have footers. So here's the full-size footer, which is simply a copyright date, and here's the mobile version of that, essentially the same thing. So, if you want to have something that's on the bottom of every page, this is where you would, customize it, the footer area. Now, there's also a header, and this is, I think, one of those key pieces of information to get out of the webinar that you might not realize, playing with the product yourself right away, is that the headers for mobile and the full-size ones are different. Here's the header for the full-size. It has the logo at the top. But if we look at the one for mobile, you'll see that it has not just the logo, it has the settings and the sign shown in here. And we're going to see some other differences when we go down a little further. So there's your headers and your footers. Here are your images for your application, all the images. And you'll notice that there are a whole bunch with the word mobile in front of them. So those were added to for mobile support. There's the icon you get if you have not bought the product. You will see that in your application. So please upgrade, and then you don't need to see that icon. You can always add it to your product if you want to. But so those are the images. Next is the master pages. And this is another important area that maybe people don't fully understand, so you want to be aware of this. These pages are common to all your pages. So your pages are derived from master pages. So that means that if you want to make a common layout change to your, a bunch of your pages in your application, master pages are a perfect place for it. Now, the CSS is good for making, color changes, things like that. But actual layout changes you can make globally, more so in master pages. There's only so much you can do in a master page. At some point, the layout is controlled by individual pages. And you'll notice that there's two ladybugs in here. We've got here's the full size blank one, which of course is for a blank page. If you want to start from scratch, you can do that. You don't have to use our CRUD pages. And then here we have the main master pages. Here's the full size one for vertical menu. You'll notice that it's got the menu as well as all the other stuff. Now, if we go to the mobile master, you notice a big difference here, and this is one of those key items. You'll see the footer's there, but there is no header. And why is that? Well, that's because this master page is used by all the CRUD mobile pages. And remember, the CRUD mobile pages do not have the menus on them. The menu is only on the start page. So there's a basic difference there between the mobile and the full-size master pages. So that's that. And please, if you have questions on this stuff, I'm moving pretty quickly. So if you have questions on things, I will come back to them during the Q&A period. But I want to get through, pretty much everything we've got here. Here's the mobile start page we saw before. We already went through the functionality, but that file is located in the menu panels area. And you'll see that the corresponding menu that it uses is right there alongside it. There's just the menu itself, in contrast to the full-size menu shown here. Also note that there's a special icon there. That ladybug's got a little triangle there, and that means that this is the start page for mobile. And if we right-click, we'll see here that Set as Mobile Start Menu Page has been disabled. This has already been set. So something to be aware of, that there are two separate start pages up to in an application, one for mobile and one for full size. And you can, in fact, have one page that is both the start page for mobile and for web by using the menus in here. And we'll talk a little bit more about having the two together in one application in a little while. So those are some other critical areas, the menu area. And then I think the last part of this tree is the shared area. Definitely an area to be aware of. These tend to be ASPXs for error handling and ASCX controls that are shared between pages. And I'm not going to go through all these, but notice that there are fewer mobile components than there are full size. For the error pages, we decided that since these tend not to be shown to the end user, they're for the programmer, that we do not have mobile-specific versions. One page works pretty well. Well, other controls like the pagination control, which you'll immediately recognize with the two buttons, these are definitely specific to the size of the page. So you could customize the layout of these components as well as the other areas, and we'll do layout customization in a little while. So that's the whole tree. And the next thing I want to talk about is editing menus. Now, if you want to edit the menus, you don't use the design mode. You use the menu editor. There's a wizard for that. So let's take a quick look at that. If we go into Tools, there's Menu Wizard, and because we created a both mobile and full-size web application, we've got two menus. Menu ACX is the full size. Let's look at that real quick. And we can see here we've got our three tables with our submenus, and you can drag and drop, move things around, and type in URLs and text and icons. Very straightforward. And that's the beauty of the mobile feature, is that if you know how to do the full-size web, you know how to do the mobile. It's really the same tools and functionality in the product. So here's the one for mobile. And it's the same thing. The only difference is there are no submenus in here. Again, we're just doing one menu item per table. And you could come in here and, well, I guess let's just do it. Change the order. You know, we could add new items here with the right-click menu, add separators, and all that stuff. So let's save that. It's probably going to rebuild the menu. That's pretty quick. Let's just take a quick look at that. And we should see that, yes, that they are no longer in alphabetical order. So very easy to customize the menus. So moving right along, I think we're doing pretty well here. We've covered, you know, the basic application itself we've created. We've done all that. So now we're going to move on to customization. I'm going to look at layout customization, creating panels, charts, and a few other things. So this is probably the last big chunk that we have here for a demo. So let's look at a CRUD page. Let's go back to the sales rep page, and let's make a few changes. So there's the full size. We're not going to work with that. We're going to focus on the mobile. Here we are. Let's go into design mode. And hopefully by now you've used design mode in Iron Speed Designer, or if you're just starting out with the product, you will definitely be using it. So the design mode has an Excel-like spreadsheet for editing the application. It's rather easy once you get used to it. And when you initially come in, you're looking at the fields in your application, but you may need to go elsewhere in the page to make changes. So you really need to be comfortable with this page section drop-down. And that's, I think, something where a lot of people new to the product don't really understand it, and it's something you definitely want to get familiar with. If we look at it, you'll see that there's a whole hierarchy, and this allows you to instantly, you know, move between any two places in the page. So I can go here from the fields to the filters area. Notice the filters that pop down. The filters that pop down, they are now here in the layout, and we could, you know, shuffle them around, delete them, you know, whatever we want to do. So this is a very handy shortcut to jump to different areas. We can jump up to the whole page level, and then we can double-click and drill down, you know, back to where we were. There's the pagination control. Very easy to navigate here once you understand the concept. And you can see it's just following us as we go. Okay, so we're in a show table page here, and so you'll notice there's a repeater control, table of rows, and the headings and the footers. And we don't create any headings by default in the mobile pages. What I want to do now is make some customizations here. We could add new fields, but I'm just going to just say, well, this is a very informal application, and so we don't need last name. It's all going to be first name. And I'm going to go in and make this first name be bold-faced, and I'm going to make it red. And that's very easy. Again, it works exactly the same way for mobile as for full-size web. And then the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add another panel in here. And I'll cover more on the toolbox later, but what I've got here is I'm going to just do another show table panel alongside these to show you how easy that is. So we're looking at the sales rep table. I'm going to just put the product next to it, right below it. I could do it horizontally, you know, adjacent, but you know, then it may require, you know, too much space. So I'm going to drag and drop the table that I want. This is an unrelated table. We could do related tables in mobile, but we're going to do unrelated. And you'll see here the configuration wizard. It shows the full-size web pages or panels grouped together and the mobile ones. So I'm going to go and just do another report and next, and I'm just going to go to defaults here. And you know, all these steps, everything here is the same user interface for full-size web and mobile. So you don't even know anything special. So I think that's one of the key things. That, you know, is that it's very easy to create and add mobile functionality to a product, or you know, just using mobile. You just use the same user interface. So let's just press finish as instantly as the panel. It's a very quick operation. And now let's build the application. So you can see the preview as it was just a moment ago. We're going to rebuild and load. And first you'll notice that the color and the boldface should show up, and then we'll also see the other panel that I created. There we are. We've got, notice, just the first name, and it's bold-faced and in red. So a very straightforward customization. You of course will, maybe do more advanced customizations, but just to show the simplicity of it. And notice there is also the products panel that I added to the page. Now, one other thing I know I want to cover here is I want to show you the charting functionality. Iron Speed has very powerful charting functionality built into the product. Extremely easy to use, which you'll see right now. So right below that table control that I added, I'm going to go in and add a chart. And I'm going to just kind of wing it here and just pick one. It may not be the best data, but I just wanted to just illustrate the process. It's, as you might expect, the same process for mobile here. I'm going to press Next, and actually that looks pretty good, that data there. Let's just, I got to pick something here, I think, though. So let's just do created by, yeah, that's fine. And we'll press Finish. Now, we could do a multi-table join here, actually, and go across tables by their foreign keys. This is a very powerful feature to be aware of in the charting and also in the reporting functionality. So that may be something you want to explore, on your own. So there, we'll press Finish, and we've just added a chart to the page. And let's go to Live Preview. So you notice all the charting types, the 4 types, and all the options there are supported for mobile. It has the same functionality as the full-size web. The only difference is that the drill downs are not enabled there, or at least not by default, because it's really kind of hard to use that on the small screen display. So here we go. There's our first show table, our second show table, and there is our chart. And we could tweak the colors and the sizes of the bars and the titles and everything, of course. That's just a quick out-of-the-box chart. So, feel free to explore with that more on your own. All right, let's see what else we need to cover here. So let's see. We did panel creation, charting. We still got the code customization wizard and the entire toolbox and the app gen options. So let's take a look at code customization wizard. Okay, if you go into Customize, there's Code Customization Wizard Examples. In fact, this started out as being pure code examples. And I encourage you, if you're at the point of doing this level of customization to your application, to check out this wizard. It really is, very helpful, very illustrative. It gives many examples here on different types of code customizations. Like here's a whole bunch for web services and validation, a drop-down list, all kinds of things. And I'm not going to use it here right now, but I just want you to be aware what's in here and then be aware of how mobile is affected. You'll notice that some of the items here are in gray in this list. And if we click on one, then we'll see that it says not applicable to mobile. So we've gone through and we've tested all these customizations, and we saw which ones really make sense, and can work with mobile. So we're guiding you there with the gray. And you'll see this gray elsewhere, like in the toolbox. The gray is just suggested. It doesn't prevent you from selecting it. So if you still want to try and do this customization on mobile, you can go ahead and do that. And now I also want to give you one general caution with this wizard, that this wizard it actually will, if you go through its logical conclusion here and fill out all the parameters, it will insert code into your application. However, it will not maintain that code for you. So you need to be aware of that, and you have to make the judgment call if you're not a programmer at all. Do you want to have the wizard inserting code in there? Because then you'll be responsible for maintaining it. So, but it's a very helpful tool for seeing what the code might be, and then inserting in the various places and filling the parameters. And it is a pretty cool thing that you may want to try when you get that level of customization. But again, beware. The gray here is just suggested. We don't recommend for mobile. All right. Let's before we get into the toolbox, so that's going to be a pretty big item. Let's look at the application generation options real quickly. Now, this could be a big item in itself. We could have a 2-hour webinar on using all the options in here. There's so many, but we're not. But I do want to just point out real quick where some of the mobile stuff is here. The stuff for generating pages and everything, the code generation stuff is all in this setting here. You'll notice that there's a mobile area that has 3 sections. The web area has even more than that. So, there are some simplifications there in the mobile area. So you would do some code generation type of customizations there. Menus are customized up in that top section, and this middle section is really where you typically will go. There are some common page options that are specific to the modern styles, and the Fields to Exclude feature, which are pretty neat, that apply to mobile. So you may want to use that. For the most part, you're going to be in the mobile page options here. Here's what I mentioned earlier, the pages to create, the 4 CRUD pages for mobile. You can turn them on here. And with any of these options, if you want the settings to apply to additional future applications, just press this button here, Apply as Default. So you might want to use the pages to create. And then here is where you customize the individual page layout. And again, there's a lot of options here in the AppGen options, and you really want to become familiar with them because this thing can save you a lot of time. Rather than having to customize the layout, if you don't like certain buttons appearing and all that, if you have an option to prevent it in the first place, that's what you want to do. So definitely play around with the AppGen options. If you're stumped, you can always contact support. A lot of questions come in relate to the options, but you can be pretty independent if you know that there are a lot of things out there that you can go search for. All right, let's go and look at the toolbox. I want to take a walk through that, and you'll see the things that are specific to mobile. So we'll switch back to design mode, and I'm going to go up to the top here, headers, footers, and menus. Now, since I've already covered some of the stuff, in the App Explorer, the concept will be familiar now. So you know what a header, you know what a footer is, and you know what the menus are. You'll notice that we have gray here and black, and that's based upon the page size, just like in the customization wizard. The gray ones are the non-mobile ones, is where it's mobile page. If we were to go to a full-size page, you'll notice that the graying switches. So that's just a cue to help you, pick the best one. You can override it, although you probably would not. But you never know. Maybe you would have a shared header or something between mobile and the full size, something like that. Anyway, you can add a header and a footer to a page from here, existing menus. You can even create new menus here by dragging and dropping. So that would all be done here. So that's another key point here I think to get from the webinar is that you create new menus by dragging and dropping from the toolbox. You're not going to use a wizard for that, regardless if you're doing mobile or not. So that's that section. There's a reports and forms section, which we've already demonstrated. Here you have unrelated tables, and if we went down into a table control, we would see related tables. So you just drag and drop the tables, and then you see the wizard that we used just a little while ago. Very straightforward. You'll notice that the workflow area here is gray, and that's because, as I mentioned at the beginning, there are no workflow page types for mobile. Although you could really kind of create your own by taking a show record or something and make some changes to it. If you want to create blank panels, those are here as well. There's crystal reports, but you'd have to see if that really is going to work well on your small smartphone. Here's the charting functionality, and we just tried this, and you'll see that we've got counts, sums, and averages, but you can pick that in the wizard if you want. So you already know how to do charting. Here's field labels and sums and counts, and I'm actually going to drill down here. Let's just take the shortcut that I showed before. Let's just go directly into fields, and now you'll see here that for the sales rep table, here are the fields we can drag and drop. If we wanted to add more fields here to show, we could do that. We could add labels if we wanted to identify what they are. And you also see that there's some reporting functions, some of, and all that. I'm just going to drag and drop that just to show you real quick. That brings up a wizard, similar to the charting wizard, but not as many options. And this will report a sum or a count. And the thing is, it also has the join feature. And I'm not going to get into the details of this, but this is a pretty powerful feature that will join up the 4 levels of tables automatically through a foreign key, a set of foreign keys. And it actually finds an optimal path and lets you customize the path. A very powerful feature there that you can use for charting and, in this case, for reporting. So, and again, that stuff all works the same for mobile as it does for the full-size button. Here are the filters, and this again works the same for mobile. Just drag and drop the field that you want, and you can customize the control type, if you want. Now, buttons. This is an area that requires a little explanation here. You'll notice the graying and the black part, and the buttons that you see in this list, regardless of the page type, those are driven by the context of where you're located. Right now, we're in a header of a table, so we're not going to really put buttons there. But if we went to the header or the title area, you'll notice that here's our menu button, here's our new button, and the titles, things that we saw before. And now the buttons here show the type of buttons we'd want to add, the menu and the new button. There are also reporting buttons, but those may not work as you like in the mobile area. You really need to try them, and that's why those are great. And there's a few other functions here that you could add if you wanted to. Another area in the toolbox that's rather large, actually, is this last section here. There's a lot of controls in here, and these are, if you're really getting down to the individual level, just an individual field, and it may not even be an Iron Speed field. So you've got AJAX controls, ASPX controls, .NET, you've got Iron Speed Gen tags, and then you've got just basic HTML tags. And you will notice again that there are some that are grayed out, but the vast majority are black. And most of the gray ones are AJAX, and some of these are just too complex for the small mobile pages. But there are many that you could do. And the ASPX, I think only the wizard was something that just really did not show well on mobile, but the rest of them you can do. And of course, all the gen tags, you can do those images, literals, all those things you can put onto your page just by dragging and dropping like that. That's how everything in the toolbox works, just drag and drop. And that's the whole toolbox. And if there are specific questions on any aspect of this, I'll go into more detail at that point. So let's see if we've got everything here. We did charting, the wizard, the toolbox, and the application generation options. So that's a quick overview of the customization. And the last thing I want to demonstrate is mixing and matching the mobile and web applications. Now, we've actually already done this. The application I created has both mobile pages and the full-size web pages. So you can do the two of them together. And it should be pretty obvious that if you wanted to one instead of the other, you can easily do that. You would just come in here when you create your application, pick your table, and turn off the full-size ones and turn on just mobile. Well, you could do vice versa. And you could always add the mobile pages to an existing application, even a migrated application. So clearly, you can have the two of them coexisting in the same application. Now, you may wonder, well, if you've got the two in one application, how do you know which pages to give a given person? Do you give them the mobile, the small page, or the big page? Well, we have automatic detection of the device type, and we redirect the user to the appropriate size start page. And so let's take a look at that. Now, I mentioned earlier that there are two start pages, or up to two start pages. You may just do a mobile-only application, in which case you just have a mobile start page, right? So here's our full-size start page. Let's go to Live Preview. No surprises there. While that's building, we're going to look at the mobile. Hit the mobile start page. Obviously, this is what you've seen. So we've got two separate start pages, and what will happen is each web browser, when it sends a request over the Internet, it will send basic information on its platform, which web browser and operating system and so forth it's using. And so we use that information, and we choose which of these two start pages to redirect the user to. And we do that based upon a setting in the web config file. And so this is something that you probably will want to look at. We've had questions about how do I do this. I'm going to search for the word iPod, and that will find it. There we are. It's called Mobile User Agents. And you'll see that there's a pipe-delimited list of strings here. And basically, this list is the list of every major smartphone from the last decade that we could find. That you probably would want to send the small pages to as opposed to the large ones. Now, we have by no means tested all of these. In fact, we've concentrated our efforts on the iPhone, the iPod, and the Android phones. But for these devices, you probably would want to still send the smaller page rather than the larger page. You're free to customize the string yourself and add and remove strings as you feel fit and try them out. So this is something that's in the online help, and also the 911 online help has expanded information on the mobile page types that we've reviewed before. So that's how you would customize that redirection logic. And that is really our most common question, and I bet you that it probably will still be asked during our Q&A period, even though I've covered it. So that's it for the demo. The last section I want to talk about is just some browser limitations that you may run into when you're doing mobile applications. And these, for the most part, are not a function of Iron Speed Designer. These are because of the browser vendors themselves. The first one is concerning Safari. This comes up very often, is that you might expect that you could take a photograph with your smartphone and then upload it over the internet with the browser. Amazingly enough, the Safari web browser for iPhone, iPod, and iPad, not for the desktop, PC, or Mac, but only for mobile devices, does not support file upload. They are finally addressing this, what I understand, with version 6.0 of iOS, which should be coming out soon. In the meantime, you can use third-party native apps to do file upload. So definitely be aware of that. Again, that is not an Iron Speed limitation. Now, Safari has a very easy-to-use file download feature. So if you want to download, that's good. There's no download manager, so just one file at a time, but it's pretty easy to use. Chrome, on the other hand, is more powerful, so file upload, download can be done. With our test devices, we found that we required a memory card to be installed in order to do that. And there's a more complex interaction on the Chrome device to interact with the file system, which Apple prevents you from getting to on their systems. So that's file upload, download, things to be aware of. And the last area are some technical limitations of the browsers. Safari and Chrome also do not support Windows authentication. And SharePoint authentication is based upon that, so that would not be supported as well. And I believe that's the case on both desktop, PC, Mac, and the mobile devices. Again, that's not an Iron Speed limitation. So if you want to use security authentication, you'd have to use an alternative method on those particular devices. And also, we've run into some problems with smooth panel updates, which make it more efficient for updating regions of your screen. So those are disabled by default in Iron Speed, but you can turn them on at your own risk. But we found there really wasn't a lot of benefit for them because the screens, the pages are rather simple in the mobile area. So just a few things to be aware of there on your mobile browsers. And I believe that is it. Yes, so I'm ready to move on to questions, and hopefully you've been submitting your questions along the way here. I've got a bunch here that I'm gonna go through, and please, if you have follow-ups, send them as well. And again, let's try and stay on topic in the mobile area. So here we go. First question from Sri Krishna. Have an Apple friend. Let's see. How an Apple friend the mobile app? Oh, how friendly is the mobile app? Well, it's very friendly. As you saw, it's really meant to be, point and click with your fingers. So you won't see small buttons. We've done a lot of optimization there for the phone, and that's something where on the iPad, it's a different story. You might want to use these small mobile pages and make them larger for the iPad because they're still designed for large, buttons and fingers. The full-size pages, aren't really so much, for that. So that is something that we've optimized, the buttons and also the amount of data. You'll see that we didn't really try and fit too much on any one page. That we have menus in separate pages, we have top-down panels, things tucked away, everything is scrolling vertically. And I think those are the things that make the out-of-the-box applications, very friendly. But you're going to customize them just like you would with the full-size pages. So you may want to change the look to suit your particular customers. We really, with any of the pages, full and small, we're just trying to give you something that is very functional and serves as a really good example or even a starting point for your own applications. But we're always amazed by customers that make changes to the layout and everything, and make things look a bit different. Okay, next question from Rajiv. Do you have to see it in an iPad tablet view? Well, I mentioned that we are not really targeting the iPad or tablets with Iron Speed Designer. The mobile support is for mobile smartphones, so because they have small displays. And the current pages we create and all the images for the buttons and all that really do not work well on a small phone. So that's really the problem that we set out to address. So I cannot say that we are made to work on iPads or to Google tablets. Now, that being said, as I covered earlier, there are a few ways you could create pages for those tablets, and I think we'll be looking more at that in the product in the future. But the most pressing need, a real painful need, was addressing the small display. So you can either take our full-size pages and and use them for your tablet. But again, you have to be mindful of having buttons that are clickable with fingers, or you could take the mobile pages, which look pretty good. Just be aware, and let me really illustrate this point to drive it home. That if you take a mobile page, and let's take the start page. I think that's a good example. We're showing it here in the phone to give you an idea what it would look like. Imagine this on a screen that's say 3 times bigger in area. It actually will look fun. It's just that it's gonna be very big buttons and not really great utilization of space. So what you probably would want to do on a tablet is to have multiple panels. You could put your menu on your left and you have a show table on the right, or you might have a show table on the left and a show record panel on the right. So you probably would do some type of layout customization there, and we do have customers that have done that. But just again, Iron Speed Designer is really not at this point geared toward tablets. It's really meant for small phones. The next question is from Ahmed. Hi, we want to build a mobile web application that our reps can use within their iPhones. How can we build an icon that can be installed on the iPhone as any other icon, and the database will be a local database on it? So, well, there's a couple aspects to this question. One is putting an icon on the desktop. And we do have ways of doing that, or I should say they do have ways of doing that. There is a way of creating a shortcut on your Apple desktop, if you will, that points to the Safari browser. So, that's something we can give you instructions on. Now, if you want to create a native application, and you're saying a mobile web application, but I kind of feel like you're looking for a native application because you want the database to be local. So, there, in the future with HTML5, there might be local databases, but right now, I mean, it sounds like you're kind of looking for a native application. And like I said in the beginning, we do not generate native applications for mobile devices, for desktops, for that matter. So, you really would have to, for that case, I think use Apple's tools to create a native app. But you may want to consider, doing a web application with Iron Speed, and having your database, hosted, at your ISP or your your IT center. So, and maybe that would be the first prototype or whatever for your application. So, but again, we're creating web applications, and the database needs to reside in a place accessible by the web server, not on the mobile device. Next question from Denver, and I'm going to take a quick a second here just to have a sip because I don't want to lose my voice. Okay, from Denver. Why still a different add and edit record for each page instead of using single add edit record page? This is a great question because the pages are essentially the same, and this is something that I've actually asked several times. And in fact, we are looking to consolidate the add and edit record pages in Iron Speed Designer for a future version. That is something that actually has bubbled up to be pretty high on the list. But we have some other big improvements that might even make that, not even be a big thing at that point. I won't, say much more on that. But we are actually planning on this, and I would expect the changes would be for both mobile and full size. So yes, very good point, and that is something that we've been wanting to do, and we are looking at. So next question from Rajiv. We have a specific need just for mobile where we want a local database so that people with no access to database can store information for up to a week and then sync with the main DB. Yeah, so this sounds like it's kind of an offline type of mode, a store and forward, or there are other names for it. And I can certainly understand the need, but that is not something that I can see you being able to do at this point with Iron Speed Designer. Because the applications for mobile work the same way as the full-size ones, in that every time you click a button, for the most part, we're going over the internet to the web server requesting the next page. Now there are some exceptions. If you look at when I press the button to show the language selection and for showing the filters, that there's no need to go to the server. But when you navigate between one page to another, from show table to show record, it's going to go to the server. So in that case, you need an internet connection. So you're not going to be able to store all the data for up to a week with the web pages, at least out of the box. Now, I can imagine you coming up with something that stores things in cookies, or maybe even a local database that's coming in the HTML standard, and then devising a way to upload that at a later time. But that is certainly not something out of the box. That would be customization. But thanks for bringing it up, since that is something we're thinking about for the future, since others have asked about that. It just would not be something trivial for us to generalize in the product. Next question from Chris. Will there be mobile pages specifically for tablet, iPad, etc. in the later version of ISD? This is a great question, and this is something we're thinking about. And in fact, it was something that was brought up when we designed the mobile pages in 9.0. And we realized the most pressing need was to address the phones. We looked at websites out there, the major ones with an iPad and iPhone, and we found that the iPhones, everything had been customized for them, except for the Craigslist website. They just give the same thing to everybody, and you just like it or not. The iPad, though, was different in that most of the websites, at least at the time, a year or so ago when we designed the functionality, they gave you the same page as your desktop PC. So it wasn't as critical of a need. But even then, we realized that's something that we are hoping to do in the future. Just that there's so many things we're trying to do in the product. What we did after the mobile functionality was implemented, we realized, well, gee, the full-size web functionality, the user interface, we'd like to improve that. And so that's why the 9.1 version of the product has a whole new set of modern page styles. And I can't go into detail on those today, but I just want to mention that that if we look in the application wizard, you'll see we've got 4 styles here that look different. Well, there's a whole separate set of styles here, classic styles, that existed before. There's like 32 of them. So we have a whole new look here that came out in 9.1. And both of those are supported, for both mobile and non-mobile. So anyway, the short answer to your question is that is something we are looking at for the future for tablets, since we do hear that from customers. It's just that there's so many different areas we want to enhance the product in. Next question from Vinit. How to host a mobile app. This is a good question, and I did cover this a little bit in previous webinars that I've had. It used to be kind of a 2-parter, and now it's consolidated into one. And hosting a mobile app is essentially the same as doing a full-size one. Your mobile pages are alongside your full-size web pages. So if you host the application, it's going to be accessible to both mobile and desktop devices. So there is one difference, though, in that if you want to access the application, you have to do a full deployment, in that it has to be on a wireless network or on something on the internet. So if you look at my application that I've created here, if I want to test this out on my computer, I can just copy this URL here and paste it into my local browser. No big deal. If I want to test on my mobile device, I have to make this application accessible over the wireless network, which means I'm probably going to use a VPN, or I need to actually have my website accessible on the internet and use the cell phone network to access it. So to actually get a real mobile device deployed or have the application accessible by the mobile device, you will have to do a real deployment, on a publicly accessible or privately accessible network that can be accessed wirelessly. So, but again, if you were to deploy a regular full-size application to GoDaddy or any ISP, that application would be deployed and hosted for mobile. So it's essentially the same process, just that for mobile you have to go all the way to get it out there. And that's why we have the live preview, and you can also do the URL here. We could test in a standalone browser as well. Next question from Stephen. When a user is operating from a mobile device and they select the URL to go to my app through the mobile device browser, is it simply going to go to the Start Mobile page of my app? Good question. And I don't think I really covered fully how the redirection works. In previous webinars, I've demonstrated it, and so let's just see how that would be. Let's go to a page here, and I'm going to copy this URL for the application. But I'm not going to take the folder. I'm just going to take the application name, and now I am going to go to Internet Explorer, and I'm going to paste it. And we'll see that we get redirected to the start page there. So what happens is there's a default ASPX page that does redirection. And now what I'm going to do, and I haven't done this in a while, but it should still work, I'm going to use the Safari browser here, and I'm going to have Safari pretend that it's an iPhone. So this is a pretty neat feature that they have in their browser that's not available, as far as I can tell, in some of the other browsers. And, well, Safari used to work for me. Let's see if it wants to come up today. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to come into Safari here. And this might be a good test anyway using Safari, because Safari for the desktop is going to be closer to Safari on the iPhone than Internet Explorer ever will be. So we just got to come in here and go to the Develop menu, which I think you make accessible with something in the File menu. But there's a Develop menu. You can look this up on the Internet, and there's a User Agent feature. And you'll notice that I can pick a whole bunch of user agents, have it pretend that it's Internet Explorer and everything. But I'm going to do instead Safari iOS 4.3.3. Now, this won't actually render like a Safari iOS browser. It'll just tell the web server that, hey, I'm Safari iOS 4.33. So let's do that. Let's go into that mode. And let's go here to the same URL that I typed into Internet Explorer. And you will see that we get redirected to the mobile start page. And it actually looks pretty good. It's, of course, much bigger. We're on a desktop. But you can see that there is detection based upon the user agent, it's called. And that actually takes place at only one point in time when you go to the application, the default page right here. Notice here, default ASPX. I click on there, and I'm taken, in this case, in live preview to the desktop version. So that's how the redirect happens. So a real important point is that redirect happens only at that point. So I can go to any one of these pages directly, regardless of the page size and my device screen size. So that means that if you want to mix and match pages, you can easily do that. You can have a link in a mobile page that points to a full-size page and vice versa, and we will not interfere. We only redirect and detect the browser size when you go to the base application, the root level, if you just come up to this level. So yeah, it makes it very easy to mix and match the pages. If you want to include a few workflow pages in your mobile application and cross over back and forth, no problem. Okay, let's see. What's the next question here? The questions that keep coming in, so I've got to make headway. And please get your questions in, because at some point there will be a last call, and that will be it. So another question about deployment from Austin. How are your mobile apps deployed to users? So, well, I guess my question would be, for anybody is, had you deployed an Iron Speed Designer application at all? It will be the same process to deploy to a production environment, for mobile. Again, the pages are just alongside the full-size web. So we have a whole online help section about that. Although many of the details will vary per ISP. But basically, you're going to take a .NET application and put it out there. We have a deployment wizard, and I'm not going to go through it all here today, but I do want to put a plug-in for this. A very handy feature that you can deploy an application, bundle up here in the wizard, create like a zip file or equivalent, and then take that file and install it on your web server. And this is a feature, I believe, in only the enterprise, the paid version of the product. The trial version, I don't think you can use the deployment wizard. It's a very handy feature to have, especially if you were to do SharePoint. And this can automate the process for you. But essentially what's going to happen is you're going to copy your pages and the code behind over to your web server, and you're going to create a virtual directory on there to access the application. But the wizard can make it easier. Again, there's all kinds of online help for it. But the process, again, it's the same regardless if you have mobile or not. Mobile is just a different set of pages included in the same application. So, but yeah, because your mobile device is a wireless device, it will need a wireless access, either through VPN and the wireless network or through the cell phone network. The next question is from Apaya. Hope I have that correct. All the themes you have, is there any documentation or suggestion of page byte size per theme? Okay, so yeah, so I think this is a question about the the download size for your web browser, and I think that's a really good question, because this actually was a big factor in our design for the mobile functionality and also for the new modern pages. We wanted to reduce the bandwidth, the network bandwidth required to download your pages. So you will see for the modern page styles like we've got here, there actually are fewer images that are used to build the page style, and a given page will require fewer images. Now, of course, if you have images in your data, well then, you're on your own. You have to download those. But the page styles themselves in Modern are actually much lighter weight than they are in Classic. But I don't have a exact figure on the number of bytes required. You probably would want to try that yourself with a network sniffer or this software for that we use to optimize our page styles in 9.1. But also mobile though was optimized as well. It uses I think far fewer images, and the overhead is lower than the full-size pictures. Next question from Peter. Can you show a view record form with 2 columns of data displayed rather than one single vertical column? Good question. Let me see how we're doing on time here. Okay, we're doing pretty good. We're doing pretty good. I think I'm doing well with the questions, and demo is well done. So let me show how to do this now. And I don't want to say, oh, well, you shouldn't do it. These things are really going to come down to what's best for you. I'll show you what you can do, and then then you have to see what works best for your data. Well, let's see. I haven't done this in a while, so let's see how it goes here. Let's just drag and drop and move things around. The editor is very easy to use, so no problem with that. So let's just move into a 2-column format and remove the extra rows and do a live preview. And that should be a 2-column format. Just a question of, will we see any scrolling horizontally? And it worked pretty well. You can see that it squeezed everything in to fit it in. And so one thing you'll notice is that this field here, this large text, could be much larger. So depending upon your data, this may not be the optimal layout. Another thing too is that you may want to change the vertical alignment here, so that fields match up. Here you can see they're vertically centered, which doesn't really matter when you're going in a single column. But in any event, that's how you would do it. Very easy to use the design mode to make customizations like that. But the thing to realize with Iron Speed Designer is that it's a general purpose tool, and we're taking approaches that we think will work very well in the average cases, and particularly the worst cases where we're trying to have those look reasonable. So that's why we do a lot of things the way we do them. Next question from Emmanuel. I don't see the Mozilla browser as part of your preferred browsers. Oh, no, that's a good question. Yeah, so our test efforts focused on the Safari browser on the iPhone and the Google Chrome browser on Android devices, and that's because those are the primary browsers for those devices. Safari is pretty much it. There are some alternatives for Apple, but Apple doesn't really encourage developing your own browser. So it's pretty much going to be Safari on that platform, unless you have a file upload concern right now. Google is a little bit different, but even then, Chrome is the dominant browser. So we had looked at the Firefox browser a little bit on Chrome, but we concentrate our efforts on Firefox on Android, but we concentrated our efforts on the Chrome browser. One thing to realize about Iron Speed is that we have so many different platforms and combinations that we need to support. I mentioned that it's actually I think like 6 databases that we support. If we go in and say add database, you can see there's 6 database types in here, 3 SQLs, but Azure is very different from CE, and there's Access, MySQL, Oracle. We support all those for both mobile and the full-size web, and then we do VB and C# and websites, web applications, SharePoint, different versions of .NET, stored procedures, not stored procedures, and then we have all the browser combinations on all different operating systems. So there's just a real combinatorial explosion, and so we can only test so many different combinations. So basically, we try to test the dominant, if there is a dominant version in any given area. So that's why Mozilla is not one that we've focused on. But you probably could use Mozilla. We just don't really know all the little details of it. I mentioned earlier that we disable smooth panel updates with the mobile pages. Well, that was because we were, a month into testing, and we did see some things that were a little strange in some cases with only certain versions of the firmware. And at that point, we said, you know what, let's disable that. There could be a problem out there. And the thing is, if you go with an untested configuration, there could be, those types of things that we don't know about, that we can't advise you about. So, but you're free to try, any browser, out there. And we continue adding support for new browsers as time goes on. Next question is from Paya again. How does this strategy compare to native Android and iPhone apps? Good question. I've actually developed native apps, so I know something about this. I just can't talk too much about it. But basically, we have a very portable approach. You don't worry about all the hardware details. What features are on which phone, or even what the display size is. Obviously, a tablet is a bit wide. You can't really use all that space up out of the box. But aside from that, you don't really need to worry about it. While with a native app, it's going to be very specific to certainly the platform. And particularly with Android, it's really tricky with their software versions. Apple is, everybody's kind of up to date on their iPhones, while Android is really kind of diverged with the 3.x and the 4.x, and everybody's still on 2.x on the phones. It's really a harder to support area. And the native apps as well, there's a lot more to creating them. You may have heard that creating an iPhone app, getting it approved by the Apple Store, is a lot of fun, meaning a challenge, and I can tell you from experience that is the case. So, you may want a native app. A native app gives you better access to the hardware. It can be more fault tolerant. If you want to do the local database, you can do that. But then you're looking at a bigger development effort, and that's a separate development effort. While with Iron Speed Designer, you can create a web application right now in your and have full-size web pages as well, with just a few clicks. So, it's really up to what your needs are and the skill sets that you have, and you have time to develop. The next question is from AJ. For simple applications, this looks good. How about a little complex application? Well, I guess it depends on the type of application we're talking about. Now, Iron Speed, regardless if you're looking at mobile or full-size web pages, it's about data-bound applications. You have a database, and you want to web-enable access to that database. Now, if you're looking to do something different from that, if that's what you mean by complex, well, then we may not be the product to develop most of that functionality. And it doesn't matter if it's mobile or not. And we have customers or prospective customers all the time asking about, how do I do, this type of application or that, and there's no database involved, and that's something where we really can't help you a lot with. Now, in terms of the layout, if you want to have a more complex layout, sure, you could certainly, do a custom layout, and I know there are customers out there that they spend, a lot of the time in design mode here, and they might start with a blank page. I showed you how to create blank pages before. They might start from, the bottom there and, do the whole look and feel, on their own, and they could do more complex layout. So you certainly could do that, but just that's to be more of a customization using the tool. What we're trying to do here is to make out of the box the applications, very easy to use. And I think one of the biggest mistakes we could have done with the mobile design is to try and display too much information in one place. And I think that's something where we have the right balance, where we should put the menu off in a separate place and have pop-downs and things as appropriate. But you could probably combine things and make a more sophisticated application, particularly if you have users that are would be able to use the application. Next question from Theo. New question. What would be a proper hook-in point for JavaScript jQuery or jQuery mobile library? This is a good question. We are using some. Well, we've disabled the smooth panel updates there, so I think there's still some AJAX happening there in mobile, but for the most part, we're not interacting with these other libraries. So that's something that, well, JavaScript, there's plenty of places to interface that. jQuery, or actually jQuery mobile is what you'd want to use. That, I think, would really depend on what you're trying to do. So let me just kind of give some general pointers here on, where you might put JavaScript into an application. And there's one feature that I think a lot of people are not aware of, or they don't know what it is. This is page directives feature. If you right-click on any page and go in there, and you'll see some interesting stuff here that you're probably not going to look at most of the time, but you can go in and customize this, and you might insert JavaScript in here on the page level. And let's jump to the master page. Remember the page section shortcut here. We can actually jump to the master page view. Let's do that. Let's make sure it all makes sense. We are now on, here we go, Mobile Master. Good. Let's right-click and go into Page Directives there. And now we got more stuff in here. This is HTML that's going to appear in all your mobile pages. And so you'll notice that we've turned off format detection. This is because the iPhone had a habit of hyperlinking phone numbers automatically, which was very confusing when it was not a phone number. We turned that off. You can change that if you want. Anyway, in any event, you'll see that there's some scripting happening here. You could easily add some JavaScript into the head section here. That would be one place to do it. Some people want to put JavaScript in line, depending upon what you're doing. So you could do that at any point in a page. Let's go back to the sales rep page. But you kind of have to know what you're doing. You have to kind of know the library that you're using, and you kind of know how, I mean, do you know how to integrate it into an HTML application in general? I mean, if you don't, then then you might have a challenge. If not, or if you do know, then you're going to be then just dealing with finding the places in Iron Speed Designer. So I think a lot depends on what your skill set is. If you could do that in Visual Studio, then it's just a matter of finding the right places. Another place you could put it in is inside the cell editor. You could go into any cell, and you could actually put JavaScript in here. Now, there are reasons why you put JavaScript in different places. The head section is the most, the safest, but it may not be appropriate for different things you're trying to do. A lot would depend upon the API and the details of that. So you'd have to really look more carefully at that. And that was something where we did think about different libraries for the mobile functionality, and it's one of the things where we really had to keep it simple. And also another factor here is that once we support something in the Iron Speed product, we kind of support it forever. And we've had a few exceptions, but we really try to support it going forward. And I mentioned before, all the testing permutations. Every library and all that we incorporate into the product is just one more thing that we need to support going forward. So that's why there's some things out there that you will not necessarily see built into the product. Next question from Chris. Is there any advantage to having a Mobi site just for mobile and a separate site for desktop web browsers? Yeah, that's a good question. You could use a subdomain, mobi.mywebsite.com. A lot of companies do that. It might be a little easier for them to organize their pages. In our case, if you did that approach, you might be looking at two different Iron Speed applications or two instances of the same application on a web server. So that might actually be a disadvantage, for you. But the thing is, Iron Speed usually is a small part of your overall website. Usually your website will have a lot of static content. At some point, there will be a members-only type of section, where you log in and you do the dynamic data-bound application, that we create. So, it may not even be a factor there. But, the Mobi thing, I think, is a little clearer to some users if you're going to give them a domain, to link to a URL. But, it seems to me if you're automatically detecting the browser type, if it's mobile or not, you wouldn't need that. So, so again, there could be a trade-off there, but, in terms of having two Iron Speed applications, or not. But, that choice is yours. Okay, and get the final questions in, please, because I think I'm down to just a handful here. So we're going to be wrapping up very soon, and once it's over, it's over. Next question from Tim. Actually, the default browser in Android is Safari, believe it or not. On really new Android devices, you can pull up Chrome. Yeah, Android devices are definitely more flexible than Apple. Apple is like Safari's default, and there's no way in the world you can change that. And even if you want to create your own browser, you're supposed to really use Safari as the underlying rendering engine, so it's very restrictive. Android is definitely a much more open environment, and so there is more diversity there to support. So, but I'm still surprised that Safari is actually the default browser on there. I don't know if that's all Androids or not. There's different manufacturers. So, but yeah, I'm not surprised Chrome can't be taken off and made it a default. And while we're on the subject of the browser diversity, this is something we looked at with the BlackBerry devices. The reason why we didn't really look a lot at the BlackBerry was, well, one is the company had a lot of problems and the market share is diminished, but the other was the diversity of the browsers, that they had so many different browsers, their homebrew browsers, and Opera and maybe even some others, that it was really not clear what we would be targeting, especially since their own browsers tend not to be very good. But the Android platform is a bit different, in that these are mainstream browsers. So I would think Safari would work pretty well on Android with Iron Speed, but we have not looked at that. Like I said, we did look at Mozilla a little bit. So thanks for letting us know about that, so we can get that on the radar screen in the future. Yeah, I'm still shocked that it's a default browser, but there are options there for the vendors. They can make certain choices themselves, at least in the Android world. Next question from NVR, MVP, Murdy, HTML5 jQuery support. Well, I see the two of those as two different things. jQuery as a library out there, and HTML5 as a whole new standard. Now, HTML5 is actually different from other standards in that it includes kind of a JavaScript standard in there as well. And HTML5 is very broad. So I kind of talked about the jQuery. That is not something that we've integrated into the product at this point. It's something I think we'd like to do. It's just that there are so many things, and so many directions we'd like to move the product into. And actually, if you want to see our future plans, you can look at the product roadmap that is in the user forum, which is a great resource in general for connecting with other Iron Speed developers. In terms of HTML5, this is a very broad standard. There's so many pieces to it, and so much of it has not been finalized and isn't really real until the browsers implement it, although they are starting to. In fact, the mobile browsers are really ahead on the HTML5 curve. Now, the HTML that Iron Speed generates should run, fine in an HTML5 browser, so you should not have, any issues there. Now, the question comes up, well, do you support HTML5? And what, people a lot of times mean is, do you support all the features that are in HTML5? And the thing is, there are so many different things in there that you don't really see any product that supports everything in there. In fact, there's some features that, just would maybe not, make sense, for a given product. So we have not, we haven't really targeted HTML5 at this point, but again, you should have no trouble using your Iron Speed generated applications in an HTML5 compliant browser, since that standard, in fact, built upon previous standards. They did deprecate a few tags, but nothing that we're expecting problems with, since we didn't use the center tags, that shouldn't have been used even 10 years ago. Okay, the next question, and this may be the last question. So from David, what is the difference between website and web application, the application widget? Really good question, and it's one of those things that unless somebody asked about it, I wouldn't get into the details. It's not specific to mobile, but definitely something you should know. A website is really not a fully compiled application. It's going to be the pages and the code behind, which I didn't look at the code behind. They're right here behind the X's. Here's the code behind. All the source code, or much of it for your application is there. There's code behind, another source code. With a website, those files are going to be right there on your web server, and they're going to be compiled on the fly when you create the application. Now, you should not be able to browse those files over the internet. Your IS should not allow that, but those files will be there. While a web application is actually going to take as much as possible the source code and compile it ahead of time when you build your application in Designer and create a DLL for you. And that DLL will go on your web server. And by the way, a SharePoint application, and there's two versions of SharePoint, that actually is a web application for SharePoint. So SharePoint will do the DLL approach. So you might say, well, which one is better, the DLL approach, the web application, or website? Well, they have trade-offs. The web application is more secure because your code is in a DLL, and it should be faster, at least initially, for starting up because there's no compilation on the fly needed to be done. A website is, potentially, less secure and, less efficient, starting it up. So, that's something to take into consideration. Website, though, is really more transparent. For development purposes, a website is great. A really important thing to be aware of, however, is that you can only move upward here. So if you have a website, you can start with website and then convert it to web application, and then convert it to 2007. I don't want to do that, and then convert to 2010. But you cannot move back. So you cannot go from SharePoint to web application or web application back to website. So if you change this, you might want to make a backup copy of your application beforehand. So great question, though. So I hope I answered that for you. Next question from, and well, I think this is our new last question, Sri Krishna. What is the difference between the free version and the licensed version? Is there a list? We used to have a product comparison of the various versions, as we actually had two paid versions, Enterprise and Pro, and we discontinued Pro. So I'm not sure if we have that on the website anymore. I have. Okay, yes. What you should do is contact your sales rep, and they can give you, a more definitive list. But let me just kind of, give you just a quick overview. So the free version, it's a fully functional version of the product, but it lets you build your application only 100 times. So if you make changes and then go to live preview or build, it's going to, use one of those builds, of your 100. So you need to be aware of that. There are some features that are not available in the trial. For example, new features typically are not immediately available in trial. I believe mobile functionality is not available unless you're using the sample databases. That's a real key point. The trial version, if you use the sample databases that we can review with the product, Southwinds and Java application, you can do almost everything with those. So they're really helpful for trying the features. If you're using your own database, which means you might be just developing your final application, then there are several features that you can't use. Again, sales can give you the details, but things that come to my mind are, I think mobile is still one of those features. The deployment wizard is one of those. There may be some security features as well, and there is the version control feature, which is source control. This feature, I believe, that is for enterprise paying customers also. By the way, there are two paid versions of the product. In case you're not aware, there is the perpetual enterprise license, where you own that version of the software for life, and then there's the subscription license, where you pay just per month. So it's much easier to get started with the subscription license. It's less expensive, but it will require you to be, online periodically. So that is the basic difference. There are a few little feature details that I can't think of right now. Again, sales can provide those details. They do that all the time. So I think that's it for questions. So I'm going to Okay, we got one last question, and I think this will be really a great plug for online help. We've got a question about, are there any books for Iron Speed Designer? I'm not sure if there are published books out there. There's lots of content out there, and since I'm finishing up, I'm going to point you, to the resources we have. There's just a lot of stuff if you haven't looked at the Iron Speed website. You probably have looked at the product area, and this this video demos, I think, is a huge thing. These are kind of like pre-recorded webinars. There's no Q&A. You can't ask questions, but there's all kinds of topics here. Definitely familiarize yourself with the stuff we have here. It's just a lot to choose from, but they're categorized. Like if we were to, let's see, if we search for SharePoint, there's a whole section on SharePoint applications, for example, and pretty much any topic you want would be in here. Another feature, very useful, is the online help, and rather than search for it, I'm just going to just plug right into it to hear from Iron Speed Designer. And let's go to the high level here. There's a very comprehensive online help. I think there's like a few thousand pages in there. It's a lot of stuff. And on every topic, there's mobile in there. New content was added in 9.1.1, and this is searchable. So definitely a great resource. And another resource is the knowledge base. And this thing is extremely useful. In fact, technical support uses this many times to really get a handle on problems that come up. We'll search for a keyword, and well, let's just try mobile, since that's what we're talking about here today. And all kinds of things will come up, and you'll see. Let's see. Well, here's the feature announcement. So that's probably not a big deal. It's a previous video, mobile pages. Here's a description of the stuff we did today. There you go. The same page that we've seen, and details on that. So lots of stuff in the online help, so definitely make use of that. It's an amazing amount. There's also troubleshooting information. I mean, I think we have one of the most comprehensive online helps out there. So you can look for error codes, and there'll be information on how to, resolve it. The other thing when you search in the knowledge base, we'll call the knowledge base, is that it searches not just online help, but it also searches our user forum, the code customizations we looked at, the base classes code. And the online forum, let's restrict the access to that, is extremely useful. This is where we get so much customer feedback. And the thing is that there are people out there, these MVPs, that have been using the product for many years, and they have this real-world experience that only they have. And here, even the designers and implementers of the product, there's some things we don't know. We actually have a bug fix in 9.1 that was a style sheet fix, and it came straight from one of the MVPs out there. They had kind of an unusual syntax that solved the problem, and we incorporated it in here. So this is a great resource if you want to find out about the product. Engage people in the user forum, and that's for free. Okay, another good piece of feedback that came in here about code customization, that we have a tutorial on that, and that is in the online help. Let's see if we can find that. If I search for code customization, I'm probably going to find a million things here. Let's look. We'll restrict it to online help. And oh, look, well, here's the code customization wizard that we looked at. So that's in there. Here we go. Code customization model best practices. That's an article. You have to watch the dates on some of these. This is from 2006, so you have to, I think, take that with a grain of salt. There's videos there. There's a whole section, though, on the code customization. Let's see. Maybe it's architecture. Here we go, code customization tutorial. Actually, that's what was suggested. This is a great section here, code customization tutorial. If you can do any code customization, definitely look at this, because we've had folks that go in there and they try and write code, and the experienced programmers, but they don't know the library, they don't know the files to work on. And so, if you're going to do any code customization that's significant, definitely read these fundamentals. The other thing, too, that I would mention is that if you're doing any code customization, get a copy of Visual Studio. It's not an all-or-nothing thing using Iron Speed Designer. You can use Visual Studio. Just press a button, and you can open your application in Visual Studio, and you can make the code customizations in there. And you have better facilities in there. You have the IntelliSense. You have debugging. So it's not like you can't use Visual Studio. You should use Visual Studio, at least if you're doing code customization. And even if you don't have the budget for Visual Studio, there's a free version, and you should be at least debug your application with that. You would not be able to do the deployment necessarily. So just a few general tips there. Okay. Okay, so we've got a few more questions here that I'm going to squeeze in here. The next question is from Abdul Nassin. How to consume web services on a mobile app? That's a good question, and I can't fully go through it here, but I will point you in the right direction. I kind of alluded to before, the code customization wizard here has a web services section, and this is all about calling your own web services. And it shows you how you can actually pass in your table information into a web service. Now, this code here would be the same for mobile versus a full-size application. Nothing special about mobile. You go into the same files and do the same customization. It's just you have data from a mobile device. So this will help guide you through the process. But much of it will come down to the details of your web services. What are the names of your services, your functions, and the parameters, and all that. And that's something you're going to have to look at yourself. And your web services have come up, with multiple customers over time. So that's something I'm hoping that will provide greater support for in the future. Okay, we had another question from Sri Krishnan. With Iron Speed, do you get native support? So I think you're asking about native app support for the mobile devices. You want to create a native app for iPhone or for Android. And no, that is not something we do. In fact, we don't do it for the desktop either. We could have created WinForms applications with .NET, and we just really did not see, at least the desktop, the value proposition there. Mobile is a little bit different. That is something I think we'd like to do eventually. But the question is, how exactly do you go about that? I mean, the Apple is a great example. To get an app approved by the Apple Store is, it's a challenge. So, you notice when I built the web application with Iron Speed during the demo, I just built it to run it, and I was done. If I had to deploy it to a production web server, well, there's an extra step with that, but that's pretty much within my IT department's control. You want to start getting apps deployed, to the Apple or even the Android store, and now it's definitely going to be a different process. So that's something we're looking at for the future. But for now, to do a native app, at least you need to use the tools that are out there for that. And that is it. That is absolutely our last question. So I thank all of you for joining us today and for your questions. And I hope that this has been helpful for you. And if you have any follow-up questions, you can always contact us through technical support or depending upon the question, the sales folks today. So thank you.